I'm Paul Skelton. I'm the Regional Development Consultant for CEDIA in Australia and New Zealand. And basically my role is to advocate on behalf of integrators and other members of the industry to other stakeholders and to ensure that the role of the integrator is known out in the market.
Now, what was your initial interest in integration? Why come to this job?
So I actually have a background in journalism. I studied journalism up on the Gold Coast, and then I realised that I didn't want to sling beer for a living, so I had to move away from the Gold Coast. And then I found my way down to Melbourne. I had a very short stint of living in Sydney for about half an hour. I was going to settle there and I had a phone call with a job offer along the way. So I came down to Melbourne and then basically I fell straight into the publishing sector. And I was working at a magazine that was a trade publication called Connected for systems integrators. I was also working across magazines for plumbers and electricians. And basically I spent 13 years there kind of building up that title and getting more interested in the market and learning all the players. And then it came up that it was a role at CEDIA to basically run it for Australia and New Zealand. And they basically offered me the role, which I kind of jumped at.
So who is CEDIA? What does the organisation stand for?
So CEDIA is the global trade association for any company that designs, manufactures and integrates smart home technology. We're also the only certifying body for systems integrators globally. So our role is basically to ensure that integrators have all of the tools they need to be educated, to be certified, to know what they're doing essentially. But then beyond that, our role is also to ensure that other stakeholders, so architects, builders, electricians, they understand the integrator's role on a construction site as well, and also how to work with them to ensure that the end user gets the best result.
So how's CEDIA going about this awareness and this education so far?
So there's multiple ways that we're going out there. From an education perspective, we have a lot of online learning for integrators that they can access, and all of this education has been created with the global integrator in mind. So CEDIA itself is headquartered in the US, but we have volunteers from Australia, from Europe, from Asia and in South Africa, all involved in creating basically education that is built on best practice. So we don't use any brands in any of the training. It is all the fundamental principles to make sure that before you go out and talk to some of the control system suppliers, that you actually understand the principles of what you're talking about. So that's the education. We then have certification. So that's for the integrators who are actually willing to basically prove their skill sets. And the certification that CEDIA has, it's all developed within the ANSI and ISO accreditation process, so they are relevant globally. They've been designed to make sure that there is no bias involved in any of the certifications, that you know that anyone who is certified has actually proven themselves to be able to deliver projects at a global level. In terms of outreach to other industries, we do have programs in place. So when we are talking about architects, builders, electricians, we have what we call the CEDIA Outreach Instructor. So with architects in particular, we have a formal CPD program where integrators who have basically been endorsed by CEDIA to go out on our behalf can educate the architect about our industry, also how to work with integrators, and make sure that integrators are kind of front of mind when they're talking to this group.
What sort of benefits does it pose to the architects to have this knowledge background after they've met with the CEDIA integrator?
The market is very much changing. So when I first started in this industry, I mean, it was very much the exclusive domain for rich and famous people, and that's what the technology was. But it's very much changed now that it's becoming a lot more accessible, and there's obviously the large technology brands, you know, the Googles, Amazons, they're all promoting this idea of home automation. So it's getting a lot more awareness out there in the mass market, and with architects, more people are coming to them now and actually asking about home automation technology. And we're not saying to architects that you need to know about it. You don't need to know how to wire up a house. You don't need to know that. What you need to know is that if you are approached by an end user, by a client, who to actually speak to. And there's a lot of systems that they probably aren't aware that actually fall within the domain of the systems integrator.
And how do they go about finding these people? What's the best strategy for an architect or a builder or even an electrician to find somebody who can give them this knowledge and reinforce what they're about?
It's basically looking for a CEDIA outreach instructor. So we do have a portal on the CEDIA website, cedia.net, where we have something called Find a CEDIA Integrator. If you click on that, it's actually a database of all of the local integrators, and that's the point where we actually will show, are they an outreach instructor, are they certified, who have they got on staff, where they're based, so you can actually get an idea of who you're working with, because there is a lot to it. It's not just picking someone out of the phone book. There is a lot more to make sure that who you're using is actually appropriately qualified, certified, and essentially know what they're doing, and they can actually offer the architects, the homeowners, that support that they need after the project is completed as well.
So what would you describe an integrator as? What is their primary role? Who are they and what are they about?
So when it comes to an integrator, in terms of the construction sector, they are quite often the first involved with the project and they'll be the last one on site. So they really are the tradesperson who's going to be there through the life of the project build, but you'll also typically have an ongoing relationship with them after as well, because they're there to make sure that everything's working for you in the long run. An integrator themselves, though, they are basically across so many different subsystems that they almost become a jack of all trades. And they need to be aware of so many things, from audio, video, control, climate control systems, lighting. They need to be across so much. So you do need to find someone who can actually be quite spread quite thin in order to ensure that they know what they're talking about. And of course, in addition to that, there are a few licenses and registrations that they would need. If they are, for example, connecting cable, they'll need to have their ACMA cabling registration. If they're installing security systems, they'll need to have a security license, and ideally, of course, that they would be CEDIA certified. So
there's a lot of terminology in the industry, such as smart home, integrated home. The difference between these two, would I need an integrator for a smart home? Would I need one for an integrated home? What's the difference between the two styles of technology?
So when it comes to having a smart home as opposed to an integrated home, that term smart home itself has been very co-opted by marketing professionals now. It's the same way that you hear it's a green home or it's energy efficient. It doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. So quite often when it comes to a smart home, that could just be a series of apps on your phone, a bunch of different DIY devices. To me, that's not a smart home, that's just a less dumb home. When it comes to an integrated home, though, that's where you actually would have an integrator involved, and it's someone who can pull all of these subsystems together into one cohesive system, and it's tailored entirely to the client's lifestyle. And that is the ultimate goal, is to make sure that when you're at home, you're actually comfortable and able to use the technology that's there to support how you want to live your life.
Sounds a bit scary for these end users to get into this industry and invest in all this technology to have their integrated home. How critical is it to find the right integrator for you based on your project, your lifelong dream, the role for the integrator in that term? How do they maintain a project? How do they look after their clientele that is in that little zone of this might be a bit of a scary investment for them? What's the whole scope in the industry around that sort of situation?
Yeah, so it's important that when you do engage with an integrator, you are picking someone who not only has a proven history of actually being able to deliver jobs and projects that work and support the lifestyles of their clients, but it is also based on the person. So you need to be working with someone who has been around for a long time, but at the same time, you're looking for someone who's actually going to be there to support you, to be able to train you in the system. So it can be incredibly daunting. we've all had technology over the past, and sometimes technology just doesn't work. That's where the integrator comes in to ensure that you know how to actually use it. And you are spending money on these systems, so it is important to actually make sure that you know what you're paying for. And an integrator that's been around for a long time and has a proven history in that those customer relations can actually show you that it doesn't have to be daunting. I think there's that initial hesitation, but once you actually have a system in place and it's tailored to how you want to live your life at home, it makes a lot more sense. And then you'll find that if you ever move, you'll want to get the technology again because you'll forget what it was like before you had the technology.
What's an easy way to find the right integrator? If I have an electrician at my site and he's put his hand up that he might be able to have a shot at this home technology, what's the best questions to ask before engaging this tradesman to do your work?
So it's important to remember that an integrator may also be an electrician, but not every electrician is an integrator. So if you are at a site and you have a Sparky there that you're familiar with, that you've used a bit, it doesn't guarantee that they're able to do this job. It is a very different mindset because a lot of electricians, they're not set up to do ongoing maintenance. So once it's installed, you'll probably never hear from them again. So it's important to work with an integrator who has service plans, who can offer maintenance if something goes wrong, that who you're speaking to, you know you have access to. And that's why you would engage with an integrator. In terms of what to look for, you need to make sure that they do have their cabling registration. They're working within the confines of the law from that perspective, that they're working within the confines of the law when it comes to security installations. So obviously a lot of people have security systems, CCTV systems. You need to be licensed in order to install those, so you need to make sure that who is actually commissioning these systems has that license. And again, when it comes to CEDIA certification, you need to make sure that they have actually proven their capability within the industry, that they know what they're talking about and they've been willing to back up their skill set and they can demonstrate that. In addition to that, the other things you can look for is whether they've ever been a finalist or winner of a CEDIA award, because that is peer reviewed from other integrators, other people within the industry. And the next step beyond that is, do they volunteer for the industry? Do they give back? Do they get involved with the ongoing education within the industry, whether it's helped to build the education, or do they make sure that their own staff are trained up as well? Because that's all going to paint a picture of whether this integrator that you're looking at working with is actually willing to put in the effort to make sure that their company performs well, they deliver the projects that need to be delivered, and that they're actually willing to support the industry at the same time.
And this information's available on the CEDIA website?
It is. So it's at cedia.net, and at that site in the top right-hand corner, we do have a Find a CEDIA Integrator link, and all of that information is spelled out there.
So explain the certification, the levels of certification, and how that affects your decision in finding the right person for the job.
Yeah. So we have two new certifications, one called the Cabling Infrastructure Technician and one called the Integrated Systems Technician. So with the Cabling Infrastructure Technician, or CIT, that's very much pitched at new people in the market. So this is really kind of setting the foundation of what would become their career, to make sure that they actually have an idea around even just being safe on a job site, but terminating cables and doing that entry-level work as they build their career. After a few years, we then get them to move up to what's called the Integrated Systems Technician, or the IST, and that then goes into a lot more of the AV integration, the control systems, just to make sure that that's where they should be out there by themselves, able to deliver projects using industry best practice. We do have a few specialist certifications as well. So we have one for networking and one for system design. Those are very, very specialised in, obviously IT networking and building residential networks, which is incredibly important these days, especially as more people are working from home. And then we have the design specialist, and that's for the people who will go there and actually work with end users and design the system and tailor it to what the end users are looking for.
There's also a Member of Excellence program that you guys have been running. Explain a little bit about how that works.
So in addition to being CEDIA members, we do have 2 tiers above that. We have advanced members and we have members of excellence. So the people who go through the Member of Excellence program are essentially able to prove that they have a history of excellence in craftsmanship. So we do get recommendations from some of their clients, from suppliers. They need to be a finalist in the CEDIA Awards to actually show that it's been peer reviewed. They need to be actively involved in volunteering with CEDIA to ensure that we can all build the industry, and also they need to be able to show that they've been actively reaching out to other stakeholders like the architects, like the builders, to ensure that our industry continues to develop that way as well.
You've mentioned a bit about volunteering. What's that sort of involve, and what's the outcomes of the volunteering in CEDIA?
So when it comes to volunteering, it's very much targeted at making sure that as an industry, we can continue to carve out our position in the market. It is an industry that's not well known, so what we do actually need to rely on is a volunteer to come in and actually help us to ensure that what CEDIA is doing is correct for the Australian marketplace, but at the same time, we're able to help the other industries as well. So we have a volunteer group that's looking specifically at architects and developing resources for architects so they can get their CPD. We have a group that's looking specifically at builders, and we're working with that group to ensure that builders can also have similar educational resources. Beyond that, we have a group working with the disability sector, and we have one that is looking at education to ensure that the education that is on offer in Australia, even though it was developed globally, it still is relevant to the Australian marketplace and the Australian condition. So all of these volunteers come together and they spend a few hours a month actually developing these resources to ensure that we are bettering the lives of integrators in Australia.
How's your experience been with the team at Wired by MJD so far? The time you've known them, their input into the industry, what sort of things stand out about these guys?
So the fact that the team at Wired by MJD became the first ever Member of Excellence for CEDIA in Australia, I think speaks volumes about the level of passion and care that they show towards their clients. Also last year, the fact that the very first time that the team entered the CEDIA Awards, they became a finalist for one of our integrated home categories, which is one of our flagship categories. I think that also shows that there is a definite level of care and understanding in the projects that they are actually delivering for their clients as well. And I think that speaks volumes about the team and how they've come together and actually work to produce solutions that are, award worthy and actually will compete on a global level, and at the same time be hyper focused on their end user as well, to make sure that what they have is something that they're going to use for years to come.